Welcome to another episode of Commands versus Traditions, where we go through certain church traditions and compare them to the Bible. Today we're looking at, are church memberships biblical? Now, church memberships are pretty prominent in church culture and the traditions. And, there's many other topics we could go into, which we also will, such as tithes. How does giving look like in the new covenant? Both of these topics are a bit interconnected because mostly with a church membership, there's a cost or there's a tithe or membership fee associated to your membership. Before we move ahead, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have enjoyed this series. If you have any other ideas or anything you want me to speak about, leave them in the comments below. In some other videos, we're going to talk about tithes and church hierarchy versus servanthood, church building or house churches. We're going to talk about all these things in the future videos. Stay tuned. So first, why are churches advocating for memberships? And most of the time, it's because people believe that if there's no membership, people are not going to commit to the church otherwise. So they believe, if they go through this membership and they commit to this membership, they're going to be becoming faithful members of the church. Some churches even go as far as saying that if you're not a member of this church officially, you're not part of the body. And this is more common in more legalistic and more cultish churches where there's more control and more unbiblical practices. And they claim that if you leave this church, you're not going to be part of the rapture because you are not a member. Obviously, this doesn't line up with the Bible. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 12:13 that for by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews, Greeks, whether slaves or free, and have all been made to drink into one Spirit. So it doesn't matter what church you're part of. You could even be part of a false church. But if you yourself are a born-again believer and you're walking in truth and holiness and righteousness, then you are still part of the body, even though you might be going through or you go into a wrong church at that time. So there are saved people in every denomination. Doesn't matter if it's a wrong or false one. Doesn't matter how we think. It is the Spirit of God who baptizes people into the body. And when the Lord returns, these people are going to be with him. So I believe there's, people who are part of the body in the Catholic Church. So your salvation doesn't have to do anything with your membership or where you go. It's your personal relationship to God and being a partaker of Christ. Also, a few reasons why people advocate for church memberships is because it pays the salary. If there's church staff, they want to be able to say, okay, this is how much we have coming in monthly because these people are committed to giving to our church. And based on these numbers, this is the staff we can employ. So the pastor, the leaders, and all other staff are dependent on the members to pay the tithes so they can receive their salary. And I have nothing against being paid as a minister. This is biblical. You can advocate for both sides for, you shouldn't be paid, but you can also advocate for you should be paid. Every minister has to make that decision themselves if they want to put that burden on their members or on their church family. Another point is, if you build a building or you rent a building, there's cost to that. So memberships help people take part of these ongoing expenses. And lastly, it gives people more control over the people because you are a member of the church. Some leaders then claim that, okay, now I can speak more into your life, both positively and negatively. So obviously, lots of these points, it's not a black and white situation because, let's just talk about the building and the ongoing expenses. The Bible doesn't command us to build huge buildings. Actually, in the book of Haggai, there's this prophet God is telling this prophet that my people are sitting in luxurious buildings, but my temple is in ruins. So in modern times, we're all sitting in our fancy churches, but his people, his actual temple, they are in ruins. And I believe this is the heart of the Lord. He doesn't care about these stones. One day, they're not going to be on top of each other anyway. It's all going to be burnt up. But what's going to stay is his temple. That's eternal. His people are eternal. We're called to care for the people. And we're putting so much money into these physical things, which again, are not bad things, right? If the church is growing and there's a need for this, there's this organic, natural occurrence that happens where you have to invest into something that can be fine as long as it doesn't take away from what's important and from obeying the Lord. But what's more healthy is even instead of growing this big church where you have these ongoing costs and expenses, right? Use the resources you already have, like your house. Maybe there's a business someone has. use these resources that the Lord has already given the church, where you don't have to open a mortgage and a loan, but rather you can use those funds to actually send people into the harvest field and give to the homeless and provide for families who are in need. So those resources could be actually allocated to obeying the Lord rather than building these fancy things and putting on these big programs. So obviously the Bible is clear that we need to have fellowship with the saints. Right? We need to get together. We need to have fellowship. But the Bible is not clear. We need to take out a big loan and build these buildings. God can lead us into it, but it shouldn't be the go-to pattern because it is inefficient and removes intimacy with the body. So where did memberships actually come from? Because they were not part of the early church. If you read early church historical literature, any historical books of the early church, if we read the epistles, there was no official membership. And even in the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, there was no official membership to be part of Israel, right? You were born into Israel. You were circumcised and you were made part of this visible membership of Israel. You didn't have to subscribe or sign up to some classes or go through some ritual to be part of a membership in Israel. You were part of Israel because you were born into it. But Paul also says in Romans 9:6, not all Israel is Israel. So one could be outwardly, a visible member of Israel without being one in the heart, the circumcision of the heart. But God knows the heart of every person. And we have this church visibly on the outside, and some claim to be Christians by their formal membership in the visible church, but only God really knows who belongs to Christ. Just because we go to church, we have a church membership, doesn't actually make us a member of the body, because those are two separate things. I'm more concerned of actually being a member of the body and functioning as a member of the body as whatever my purpose is assigned to, right? Because if I'm a member of the body, whether I'm the mouth, the finger, the nail, whatever that is, I need to be functioning in my ministry and the gift that the Lord has given me. And we should be able to do that without a church membership because we're baptized into the body by the Spirit and not by a traditional membership. So going back to the Old Testament, if we compare that to the New Covenant, church membership in the Old Testament had a visible outward expression seen in the Hebrew people, and many who appeared to be members, of that tribe, of that nation, were not actually members of the covenant. So their external observances, the things they were doing, were actually despised by God because they had become just tradition, right? And these people were just going through the motions. And Paul says that Israel was given to us as an example so we don't end up like them. So even though they were zealous, they actually became proud in their perceived success. We could say the same thing today. Look at my big church. Look what we've built. We have 1,000 members. We have 200 members. We have 500 members. But yet God could look at that and say, I despise this. You guys have become proud hypocrites. Amos 5:21, God says, I do not savor your sacred assemblies. You offer me burnt offerings and your grain offerings. I will not accept them. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not hear the melody of your stringed instruments. So we can do all these things and become proud, but actually we're not part of the body. So the memberships really mean nothing. But yet within the nation of Israel, God is saving a remnant. He is purifying a remnant. And in the same way, the church has both wheat and tares, and they're going to grow up together till the end of the age. So some of you're asking yourself, okay, but how do we excommunicate people? If you're going to the brother and he is not repenting, you bring 2 or 3 people with you, still not any change. Jesus says, then tell it to the church, right? So how do you tell it to the church if there's no official membership? How do you know who to tell it to? And these are good questions. And we have to look them through a biblical lens. We can't put our traditions on those verses. And really, what it comes down to is that we should be committed to a group of people. We should be committed to a local body of believers. But that doesn't have to be in a form of this setting how we look at it today. For example, our church, we have no official membership where you have to sign up. But we know exactly who is committed to this body, who is really part of this body, they're part of the family. Because Christianity is all about relationships. It's not about the rituals or about doing all the things. It's about being in fellowship and in relationship with the saints. So if someone is saying, I don't believe in church, I don't need to be a member of the church, they're definitely also, they've gone to the other extreme where, I don't need to be a member of the church. But actually, the Bible calls us to be part and to have fellowship and be a partaker of the body and to have fellowship with the saints, because then we're walking in the light. So it is of utmost importance that we're committed to a body of people, a body of believers, but we can't make it a church membership because the Bible does not speak about this. One verse people like to use is Acts 2:41, where it says, "So then those who had received his word were baptized, and that day there were added about 3,000 souls." So they're saying, okay, these 3,000 people that were added to the church. And yes, it's true, they were added to the body of Christ, but the body of Christ it's a global body. It's a spiritual body that is made up of local congregations, local bodies that are working with one another, that are fellowshipping with one another. So then you might be asking, but Patrick, we have all these costs. We have the building, the pastor needs his salary, and this and that. How do we sustain this church? And that's a really good question. And the way we see this biblically is not us asking people to give, it's us generously giving to the need of the body. So if the body has a need, we are supposed to step in and help out. And on top of that list should not be the pastor's salary. It should not be the building. It should be the needs of the people. And once those are met, then we can, okay, hey, our pastor is working so hard, we should pay him some money. And then the people that are committed to this church, they're going to be putting away money to support the ministry of their pastor. But the pastor's heart should be, hey, I don't want to be a burden to these people. I'm going to go work with my hands so that I'm not a burden for my own members. So where did this membership come from? And it really only started when the Roman Empire became the official Christian faith, when the Roman Empire started to take over and membership in the church increasingly became a condition for rights of citizenship. So the state and the church were joined as one. And then if you wanted to become a citizen of the state, you also became a member of the church. If you became a member of the church, you became a citizen of the state. So the state and the church were joined as one. And, we see this now historically. Whenever the state and the church tried to work together, it never ended well. So before the Roman Empire joined with Christianity, there was never any membership. But what existed was groups of believers committed and devoted to one another, laying down their life for one another, loving one another, being united with one another, and living out this life in community. So if we as disciples properly understand what it means to support one another, to give to the ministry, and to share our burdens, and to be committed to one another, and to fellowship with one another, we wouldn't have the need for memberships. But because of our fear that people are going to leave the church, they're going to do what they want, and because we want to create church rules, and all these extra things we don't find in the Bible, we create memberships to build this organization. And with this organization, there's board of directors, and the statement of faith, and all these things didn't exist back then. There were the apostles, from Jerusalem. They were overseeing, helping make decisions. When things were not clear, they would go to the Council of Jerusalem because they didn't have anything written down. We didn't have any guidelines. But now we don't need a statement of faith. We have the Word of God, and we should be always looking for the truth and continue to grow and to never stop seeking to learn more about what the Word has to say. We've made church be an organization and a place of worship rather than living it out as a community. So how are we doing this in our context? We don't have memberships. We don't have an official membership, but we do know who is committed to the body. And I see this is how this should be done biblically. We're devoted to one another. We love one another. We support one another. And people give to the needs of the church because this is where they attend. This is who they're committed to. So they feel obligated to support, because rightly so. Just as Paul was traveling to different churches, collecting finances for the ministry. And if we attend somewhere, we should also support them financially. But that doesn't have to come through a church membership. If we are already members of the body, why do we need a membership? Anyway, what are you guys' thoughts about this topic? Leave them in the comments down below. Make sure to watch the next recommended video right here on the screen. And if you want to work with us to prepare your community, fellowship, or church for the Lord's return, visit our website for more information.